I want to explain to you that even if your kids are not on social media, that they might be experiencing symptoms of anxiety, depression, irritability, and sleeplessness just from being on devices, and you might be too. This is about something called a dopamine deficit. I first heard about it from psychiatrist Anna Lemke, who wrote the book Dopamine Nation. More recently, Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the amazing book, The Anxious Generation, also referred to this phenomenon. I explained this to my kids recently, and it was very eye-opening to them. What you need to know is the body likes to always maintain a steady state called homeostasis. So say the state that we need to be in terms of our dopamine regulation and transmission is right here. When we are constantly being stimulated by apps, by games, by social media, which really is designed to keep you stimulated because the algorithm knows what you need and what you're interested in, your dopamine levels go up to here. And that can be pretty consistent depending on the amount of time we're spending on any sort of screens, including texting, including emails, something that we feel like we're constantly going back to get that little surge of dopamine, which occurs when we are exposed to new or novel information. Now, in order to maintain that steady state, like I said, was right here, what happens in the brain is the body begins to downregulate dopamine transition, which means our dopamine falls down to here. And that is where, in order to bring it up to here, that's where down here, we experience all those symptoms of essentially withdrawal, anxiety, depression, irritability, dysphoria, sleeplessness, and increased suicidal ideation, which we're seeing all across the board for teens these days. Now, this is so important to know because we may be going to see someone for these symptoms and automatically being prescribed or treated pharmacologically, even therapeutically, when there's another intervention that we really should try first for ourselves and for our kids. What we're finding is many people are in that dopamine deficit state. And what we're seeing with kids and teens is they're unable to handle the regular challenges of their life. They're unable to tolerate distress because they're in that deficit state. So the recommendation in order to bring that state back up to normal levels where there is neural adaptation so that more modest rewards will stimulate the levels of dopamine that we need, not those excess levels, which then drop our body into that dopamine deficit state, is we abstain from those things that are constantly stimulating our dopamine. How long is the question that I always get asked. 2 weeks is minimum, and they still show evidence of being in that dopamine deficit state for 2 weeks, but 30 days is about on average the amount for real neural adaptation to change those reward pathways. Now, I know this is hard, but I think understanding it and explaining it to your kids provides a little bit more motivation on limiting the amount of time that we're on screens and devices and really doing whatever we need to do to actually limit it. And sometimes that requires some pretty drastic behavioral change, but we're seeing the overall neurological effects on the system, both for adults and kids, on the brain, on mood, and with pretty serious psychiatric outcomes. So I just wanted to share this information, and you can read more about it in Anna Lemke's book or in Jonathan Haidt's book.